People are getting poorer and poorer, and the top is getting richer and richer. And unless you understand that fundamental fact, you are completely out of touch.
We don't have unlimited outrage. Save most of it for the Republicans while they are doing some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. But also save some for the Democrats, especially when they betray you.
And we also want Democrats in leadership who have the same level of outrage about what the Republicans are doing as we do.
This is like one of those moments where, you're like, how could Germany have turned? How could the people have allowed Hitler to come into power and let these horrible atrocities to happen? And you're like kind of seeing exactly how it could happen.
If the Democratic Party won't stand up for you, who will? The only people who can stand up for us is us.
Hey folks, welcome back to Talking Politics with Mom. Now, I know the news cycle has moved on to the Jeffrey Epstein revelations and, Trump threatening to execute Democratic lawmakers, but there's something else that happened not too long ago that my mom and I are still mad about, and we need to vent about it, and that's the capitulation of the Democrats during the government shutdown. And so for the first time ever on this podcast, we're going to invite two other members of this family to come on the program and talk about it. Hi, Mom.
Hello, children.
Hi,
Hi,
Mom.
Normally it's just me and you, but we've got these other beautiful faces. Who are these folks?
Oh, these are my beautiful, beautiful children. Like my grandmother used to say, one more beautiful than the next. So we have the beautiful Anna, raise your hand,
Hi.
who is in the Sunshine State of Florida,
In a beautiful room, I might add.
and a beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful room.
Definitely
My
real.
beautiful background makes me a little wavy, but that's okay.
Everything she learned about fashion and decor, she learned from me.
True.
Clearly.
And then we have the beautiful, beautiful William, raise your hand, and the beautiful, beautiful Daniel, both in Los Angeles.
Why did you call this family meeting, Mom?
Well, okay. Actually, this family meeting kind of called me because for the first time ever, two of my children that I don't ordinarily talk to about politics that much spontaneously got in touch with me and were just, I've never seen any such upset about a political thing as what happened after the election, like 10 days ago. I want people to hear your anger, how betrayed you feel, and how crushing this was to you that you expressed to me. Because you're the best children that any parent could ever have. You're wonderful human beings. You care about other people. You care about the planet. You work so hard, and you have always worked hard. And you're at the point in your lives where you should feel secure, that the world opens up more and more to you. And instead, everything is going in the opposite direction. That you have, it's just wrong that you just don't know if you'll be financially secure enough to take care of your families. It's just wrong. There's something seriously wrong, that everything is actually getting worse. The harder you work, the harder you have to work just to stay afloat. And I think that kids in your generation feel that all over the country. And I think that there has been this like spontaneous outrage in the country about that and many other things, but especially about that, about what's happening to immigrants, that's going to affect all of us. And in the middle of this, where people are really feeling this righteous outrage, it almost feels like the 1960s to me. We get to have an election. Most people never pay attention to these elections. They're in the wrong year and the wrong month, and people are busy. And this year it was a referendum on how bad things are and a message to the people who have the power to fix it. And the message couldn't have been more clear, that if you are not for us, hardworking people, who just want to play by the rules and get ahead, then we are going to punish you. And if there's anybody in power who stands up for us, we're going to reward you. And we're going to come out in such numbers that we are going to make our voices heard, and you cannot ignore them. And the epic beatdown of the Republican Party all over the country, in every nook and cranny of this country, was a clear message to a Democratic Party that seems to have gotten a spine somehow. I don't know where they found it, that they were on the side of people who work hard and the people who struggle every day and can't, feed their families and put food on the table. And I swear to God, the ink was not even dry on the ballots before they stabbed everybody in the back. And so that's how I feel. But, I grew up in a completely different time where at this point in my life, I was seeing a brighter future and I was much more financially secure, and I didn't have to worry if I could pay for my health care. I wasn't in the same position as you, so I don't even want to hear from myself about what I think about this. I want to hear from you and your generation, and I want everybody to hear your outrage.
Yeah, so what we're
Yeah.
talking about, of course, is the capitulation of the Democratic Party following the election regarding the government shutdown. Dan, you
hmm
follow politics pretty closely. In fact, you and I have started a YouTube channel together where we talk about a lot of political issues, mostly through the lens of 1980s horror movies, which allows us to look into Ronald Reagan's America and its enduring impact today. So people should check that out if that's the kind of thing you're interested in. But tell me what your initial reaction was when you learned that the government shutdown was over and exactly 8 Democrats joined the Republicans in ending the filibuster. What was your reaction when you found out what they got for it?
Let me kind of zoom out, which is, Republicans disgust me every day with what they're doing in our country. I have a long list of things I can express my rage about. I have almost never been this enraged and furious with Democrats, especially Chuck Schumer, who needs to, at the very least, step down from leadership, ideally to resign, and heads need to roll in the Democratic Party, because capitulation is a very generous word for what this was. I think this was the equivalent of having a fist fight. You've beaten someone so that they are on the ground, barely conscious, and before you land the final blow, you run out into traffic and get hit by a car. This is a man with no leadership qualities. He is a black hole of charisma. He has no theatricality. He has no ability to communicate the seriousness of things happening in our country. He is feckless beyond belief. And this shutdown was the perfect example of how he is incapable of leading. We had just about the biggest landslide a week before we had ever had. We had complete agreement that the Republicans were to blame, which means that if Republicans are to blame, the public pressure is on Republicans to fix it. And that is where we were at. The strategy of the Democrats was to do exactly that, to put the onus on the Republicans to fix the problem. The problem that the Democrats identified was that the ACA subsidies are all going to go away, and that the price of healthcare and insurance is going to skyrocket, not just for people with subsidies. It changes the entire game. Healthcare is already beyond unaffordable. I don't think I pay a huge amount for what people pay, but I pay $450 for me by myself. I cannot afford that. And that is on top of the fact that when I go in to get my healthcare, I have to pay a copay. I had a follow-up appointment I had to make with Kaiser. I called them because they wouldn't give me my medication until I had a follow-up appointment. The earliest follow-up appointment they had was 7 months later. So not only is my healthcare too expensive, even as it is, it's not accessible. The ACA, which did lots of good things for our healthcare, still was extremely broken. And instead of anyone trying to fix it, we are in this situation. I think what really enrages me is that the Democrats had a strategy. And instead of waiting for the strategy to work, they just gave up at the finish line. It's political malpractice. If you don't even feel like the Democrats will stand up for you, it's clear that no one will stand up for you.
It's a little suspicious that all 8 of the senators are either retiring soon or not up for re-election for many years. Sister, we brought you on because I feel like you're kind of a good representative of someone who's certainly tuned into politics, but you're not like us sick freaks who like read about every tiny little thing that happens. You're like a lot of people who try to pay as much attention as they can, but there's a lot going on and you've got a family and you've got a lot of other things to take care of. But I'm curious, what was your initial reaction when you heard the news that the government was reopened and that 8 Democrats had joined the Republicans to what I call capitulate?
Or backstabbing. Or I mean, it feels like such a betrayal. As you said, I don't always follow every single thing to the T. And part of the reason I don't is not because I don't care. And also, obviously, I am like so many other people busy with so many other responsibilities. But it's also when I really engage, I get so mad. I like an unhealthy amount of mad. Like we were talking on the phone the other day, Will, about this, about you asking me to come on and talk. And my son came in the room and said, "Mommy, who are you arguing with? Who are you fighting with?" And I said, "Oh, actually, I'm not fighting with anybody. Talking to Uncle Will, and he and I agree." I guess it's good to have that fire, but it also feels very frustrating when you feel powerless to do anything with that. The night before, just on Insta, I was looking at Instagram at night, and it listed the 8 people that they seem to already know were going to vote to end the shutdown, right? So this wasn't a surprise that these people were planning to vote this way. It actually had not been on my radar up until then. I was feeling very good after the Tuesday elections. I was like, yes, we're finally like people are standing up and saying no to fascism, no to Trump. Trump himself said, when there's a shutdown, it's the president's fault. And Trump himself has been, breaking the law, right? Or planning to break the law anyways, in terms of like SNAP and all these things. He's prepared to starve American children, ready to let potentially tens of thousands of people die without their health care, right? That's on him. And the American people clearly made their voices heard on Tuesday, said, no, we reject that, right? So he's having one of the worst probably weeks of his presidency. And you feel like, okay, yes, we have a chance. We have some leverage to have our demands met. We have the capability right now to force the Republicans to compromise, comply with some of our demands. And they just folded. I woke up and I was not surprised, but I was so angry that this happened. And I started thinking, this is shady. How is it that there's just the perfect 8 people, the exact number of people to end the shutdown? What's at play here? It really I'm somewhat cynical about politics. I don't believe everything that I see. I know that there's a lot of corruption, a lot of nasty, gross things happening in the background that are not always talked about enough. A lot of all this corporate, all this money, all this. I'm like, then why? Like, why were there these 8 people? People have given a lot of explanations that I don't feel like suffice to end it when you have the opportunity to protect our healthcare. Of course, they're going to have to reopen the government eventually, right when everybody's getting really uncomfortable and where it seems like this is the moment where we could really press through and really expose Trump's cruelty, right? And how he is affecting the American people. We fold. We basically reward him for his
Yeah.
cruelty and
Yeah.
his breaking the law. We don't stand up, right? It's mind-blowing. And it's so sad.
The thing that Democrats are famously most pissed off about, Democratic voters, about the Democrats in positions of power, is
Mhm.
exactly this.
Right.
This move played exactly into the narrative that
Yeah.
Democrats won't actually fight for us at the end of the
Yeah.
day, that
Yeah.
they are cowards, really. It's funny. I watched a bunch of Chuck Schumer interviews going into this, and I was trying to look at some of the stuff with the 2018-19 shutdown. I saw these quotes of him saying, I really believe if you fight, you win. If you fight on the side of what's right, then you win. I'm like, the irony could not be thicker because you did not fight. And the thing that's really cowardly to me is that Chuck Schumer was not one of those people who voted for it. He's pretending that he
Exactly.
doesn't even know what happened, as if that helps him.
It seems fake. Like, if I'm seeing the day before on my Instagram, right, that these 8 people are planning to vote against us, I started looking on their handles on Instagram, and all of their pages were flooded with Democrats like us that were saying, stand the line, stand up for us. People giving their stories about, healthcare and giving like really, moving testimonials as to how this will affect them, not just their lives, but in the way that they will vote and engage in the Democratic Party. Like, it seemed so clear. And then they all just did it anyways.
The same time that also Gillibrand and Schumer, the most kind of high-profile Democrats, wouldn't support Mom Donnie. This is the most charismatic person we have had in the Democratic Party since arguably Obama, maybe AOC, but clearly has grassroots support, even in the face of overwhelming support and celebrity and widespread excitement. Chuck Schumer couldn't help but pour cold water all over the excitement. Say, don't get too excited. And it's not just Schumer, though. I want to be clear. The Democratic Party has a theatrical issue. They do not understand that part of politics is theater. Let me give you an example. I was watching one of these Chuck Schumer interviews. Chuck Schumer, when he sits down for an interview, crosses his legs, hunches his shoulders, and becomes the smallest man you've ever seen. Trump, who I hate, makes his legs spread wide and looks confident. I hate him, but he at least understands that part of the game of politics is to emote and to have passion. You need to have passion. Clearly, I got this from Mom, but if you don't have some element of emotion, then people don't believe that you understand how serious it is. If every time that something bad happens, Chuck Schumer goes up there and says, I strongly condemn these actions, it doesn't mean anything to me. It really does not.
Well, you know what? I was struck by something you said to me, which was you didn't want to be a Democrat anymore.
Yeah, we know the Republicans are worse, but you also, in moments like these, start to understand why people are so cynical that sometimes they say they're all just the same.
Which is not, it's not true. They are not all the same. There are a lot of very substantive differences.
Yes.
Opinions on abortion, on queer rights, on wealth inequality. There, but I think we sometimes care too much about the policies these people believe in and less about the actions they take. Because
Exactly.
it's great
And
to
their
hear someone
willingness
say,
to fight as well. Like,
yeah, and I've been someone who's been very kind of like critical of like, y'all, we don't have unlimited outrage. Save most of it for the Republicans while they are doing some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. But you also save some for the Democrats, especially when they betray you.
well, and we also want Democrats in leadership who have the same level of outrage about what the Republicans are doing as we do.
Agreed.
You know, the other thing about the theatrics involved is that one of the most powerful tools in politics is storytelling, is a narrative. Most people are not following politics as closely as any of us. They're living their lives, and only a few things break through. And for me, one of the most frustrating things about this is that some things were actually breaking through in the favor of those who think that what Trump is doing is an authoritarian takeover of our government. So we just had 7 million plus people out in the
Yes.
streets saying no to fascism. We finally had a Democratic Party who was starting to act like they had a spine. They picked an issue. They said these subsidies are about to expire and they're going to raise the cost of healthcare. And everyone voted in support of that strategy. The narrative that had been created was the Democrats are standing up for you. Finally. And so we were
Finally.
all feeling good. People out in the streets, people voting, Democrats showing a spine. The public was blaming the Republican Party. So the Democrats were winning. So, Mom, what does this say about the Democratic Party and their ability to meet the moment?
To me, this is one of the most important turning points that I've ever seen in my life. You know, you don't get to see very many of them. One was, the emergence of the civil rights movement, the anti war protests in the 1960s, the women's movement, that whole period of time that really changed America, the way people thought, the way people acted, what their values were, and it exposed all these fault lines. This is one of those times. One of the great things actually that happened because of this betrayal. Two things happened that were really actually a silver lining. The first one is the Republicans showed exactly who they are. They didn't hide behind trans women in women's bathrooms as the great issue of the time. They were just baldly showing their ruthlessness, that they were completely willing to let their own supporters starve to death and go without health care in order to get what they want, which is tax cuts for the incredibly wealthy. And they didn't hide behind these issues that have divided working people, these cultural issues. They didn't even bother hiding behind them because they've always known that they would lose if people actually realized that they didn't give a rat's ass about you. And it was exposed. I mean, it really was exposed that the right-wing people were calling their own supporters who work hard and can't make it welfare queens. And one guy said, you need to get off your cocaine. And these, talking about their own supporters for all the world to see, the Republican Party showed its true colors. And the second thing that happened is that the Democrats showed, I think the Democrats' heart is in the right place, but they're too out of date. They're out of date on social media, they're out of date on communicating, and they're out of date on ideas. because the leadership somehow thinks that if they just get in power, everything will go back to the way it was. It will never go back to the way it was, because the issue is not to be Republican light. We don't want a lot of regulation. We
Exactly.
just want smart regulation. We're not going to give up social welfare programs. We're just going to make them smarter. No, people are getting poorer and poorer, and the top is getting richer and richer. And unless you understand that fundamental fact, you are completely out of touch. And neither party understands that. And this is the moment, like you said, that if the Democratic Party won't stand up for you, who will? And the answer is the only people who can stand up for us is us. And we need to send the message to the Democratic Party that the times have changed. The only thing important now is redoing the deal between the government and its people so that the rich don't get richer and the poor get poorer and the middle class gets poorer. And you try to patch that up with, food aid. No, people deserve a wage that they can buy food with and that they can buy housing with. And their health care should be affordable or even free. And the Democratic Party is not there. They just want to be Republican light, a lot of them, the leadership. They just want to go back to the 1980s, the 1970s. You asked me about theatricality. He couldn't be theatrical about what he believes. He thinks that you can just get into a room with these guys and they'll give a little and you'll give a little and you'll all go home happy. No, it's way past that. The oligarchs have asserted their power. They're taking over the government piece by piece. And we need to see that. And we can use the Democratic Party as that vehicle. But it's too late for leaders like this. They are so out of touch. They are out of touch with your lives. They don't understand what it's like to be you.
Because none of them are from our generation. Somehow still, at this age, there are almost no millennials. The people who all voted against this have no stake in this. One, they
Right.
have enough money. Two, they've all been in there for a long time. Why do we have Mitch McConnell tripping and falling on the middle of the floor because someone asked him a question? Why are we having Dianne Feinstein die in office?
I don't want to get rid of Bernie.
I don't want to give up Bernie, though.
Yeah, I don't want to give up
But
Bernie.
you know what? Okay, let me just add one other perspective to this, which is I'm going to put a little bit of fire on my favorite senators, Bernie and Warren, and some of the people who are our best shot. I think Bernie is just about as good a senator as we got, him and Warren. And even they won't call for what is obviously necessary. If you have a scandal like this in an organization, heads roll. If you have everyone pissed off in unison and saying, that's not what we wanted, you betrayed us, someone loses their job. And at the same time, we have Indivisible and Move On both saying Schumer needs to resign and we're not going to support anyone who won't advocate for his resignation. Our most progressive senators won't call for him to resign. What is that about? That is out of touch as well. And meanwhile, not only will they not stand up for healthcare, the AI situation is threatening to undermine everyone of our generation. It's going to put millions of people out of work. It is going to create an incredible amount of energy demand, such that all of the big companies have all abandoned their sustainability goals. At the same time that the scientists are saying, actually, remember that point of no return climate-wise? We're there. I had my two friends stay with me for a month in LA at the beginning of this year because of the fires. And they lost their home and they stayed with me. And because we had to, and we were just on alert about where we would go next. So we don't have time to wait and say, AI, what do we want to do with that? At the same time that the AI lobby is putting pressure on Republicans and anyone they can get their hands on to pass the type of legislation that says you're not allowed to put any restrictions on this technology. So there is an overwhelming sense, not just healthcare, technology, policing, that the people in power are not looking out for us. And the people who should be are too scared to make their voices heard.
I think it's pretty clear that we're all feeling that many in the Democratic Party are not meeting the urgency of the moment. Part of it, as
Yep.
you said, Mom, is that they're incredibly out of touch. They're stuck in a bygone era where, you know, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan hash out the details of a bill and, you know, hang out after work. But it's deeper than just being out of touch. Anna, you and I were talking about the way this whole thing went down. It was so flummoxing that it became hard not to engage in not just cynical perspective, but in some ways sort of a conspiratorial attitude where it's
Mhm.
like, what's really going on here? This is incredibly suspicious, right?
Yes. It is incredibly suspicious. What did those Republicans that flipped on us have to gain? Or whose pawns are they?
Or the
I don't
Democrats who flipped on
understand.
us.
I'm sorry, the Democrats who flipped on us. They just did it of their own volition. They were really moved all of a sudden to change their vote. What made them shift?
Let me ask Anna a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that in your mind they can do to regain your trust?
I think they need to be really honest. I still feel very unclear about why these 8 people flip-flopped. I don't buy their reasoning. So
Right.
that makes me feel like there's this other thing at hand. And if Schumer didn't have it in him to turn one of those people so that this vote wouldn't have happened, then I feel like he must be in on whatever that thing is.
Right. And I think you're
Eh,
spot
Yeah.
on that.
And I think that it's also
Right?
very clear that there were probably other people who wanted to vote this way and that
They didn't, and they let these people take the fall. I'm sick of it.
You know, one thing you learn in law school when you learn as a lawyer to negotiate. Never go into a negotiation without an exit strategy.
Right. But why, when we had them in a position where they were going to be forced to negotiate with us, where people were really blaming the Republican Party, it still does not make sense to me. There's something very shady about that. And I think that's what really just like enraged me. I mean, the
Yeah.
big, beautiful bill and all that stuff, outrageous. I mean, we haven't even talked about this whole ICE situation and all the funding that's going to ICE and how we can't seem to find money for healthcare or childcare or all these necessities for Americans, but we're funding, the imprisonment of people in this country and the cruelty of all the things that ICE is doing. We haven't even talked about that. That's one of the other things that just I feel so sick about right now. I didn't realize like how big the budget that was being allocated to ICE was until I started looking into some of the details ahead of this call, and it made me sick.
Yeah.
And the fact that, so much of that money is going to go to these, private companies that are going to be used to imprison and disappear all of these people. Like, why is that not coming out of the mouth of every single Democrat? Why is that not being like screamed at the rooftop? This is like one of those moments where, you're like, how could Germany have turned? How could the people have allowed Hitler to come into power and let these horrible atrocities happen? And you're like kind of seeing
Right.
exactly how it could happen
Yeah.
because people are being neutral on atrocities. The Democrats need to stop being neutral on atrocities to get my trust back.
Yeah.
They need to stand up when we have a moment that we could actually win something for the American people, to have the backbone and to be, united and do that and stop folding. This isn't like this is the first time that this has happened. This is just one more in the long laundry list of when Democrats do that. I can't say I am a proud Democrat. I don't feel like that. I vote Democrat. I'm not saying that they're both the same, but like I don't feel particularly proud of the party in general. There's just like a few handful that really represent my beliefs that are actually progressive. It's a bunch of establishment people, like you say, Republican lights. That's how I feel. It's a bunch of Republican lights.
From my perspective, one of the main things that was looming is that they were afraid that the filibuster would get overturned. Trump was putting a lot of pressure on the Republicans to get rid of the filibuster. And from my
Right?
perspective, I'm like, don't throw
So
me
what?
in the briar patch. Like we should get rid of the filibuster because the filibuster is not in the Constitution. It's a rule that can be overturned at any time. It basically makes a whole series of types of laws require a 60 vote threshold to get voted on. And so, what that does, and why I think that the Democrats were afraid that they might lose that, is that the filibuster allows many of them to vote for things that they know actually won't end up passing. Let's say there's a minimum wage bill and you happen to have a Democratic majority. You have 53 Democratic senators and there's a minimum wage bill that comes up. Every one of those Democrats, because they know their constituents want it, can vote for that, but they know it won't pass. So those senators who may not actually want that bill to pass because their rich donors don't want that bill to pass can vote for it safely knowing that it won't pass. And so that's where this cynicism comes in, is that we don't have people who explain to us what they're doing and why in a straightforward way. And it's why we've seen, year after year, Republican majority, Democratic majority, Republican majority, Democratic majority in the Senate. And each time the population gets fed up with each party and we go back and forth, I say let democracy function. If you win, actually implement your agenda. And then the voters
Can say yes or no.
can decide whether they like what you did or not. But now we're in a place where it really truly does feel like it's run by the oligarchy. I think they have
Exactly.
much more control over the Republican Party than they do the Democratic Party, but they clearly have members of the Democratic Party who are working on behalf of the status quo.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. And we wonder why young people are disengaged and why people say, "Oh, politics don't matter. My vote doesn't matter." It's exactly because of things like this. The lack of transparency and the lies that they tell us to our face about why they changed their vote, they're just lies.
It's insulting.
And so many things are in the balance. It is insulting. It's super insulting.
And things like the federal minimum wage hasn't raised for ages. The average person cannot buy a home, or the average person who buys a home can't do so until they are nearing retirement age. Now,
Yeah.
they're talking about 50-year home loans. Basically, we are a funnel. The people who are not ultra rich are just feeding the rich. We are just almost like cows being just, we are resources to them. For example, the AI situation. And Bernie has actually been great on this in that he's saying that needs to enrich everyone. Because otherwise, what? People can't get work now. You literally created software that plagiarized their skills and sometimes their art. And even if these companies get sued into oblivion here and there, some of them do, the people who are at the top are just going to parachute down into another castle with their riches. So there is so many levels where it's not just that it's continuing to be unfair, it's gotten worse and worse
Oh,
and
yeah.
worse and worse for young people specifically, especially entry level jobs. There are none basically for young people trying to start their careers. I have worked as an actor, right? So just looking at the acting side, for just a second. People used to get jobs as actors, say they had no experience, they're young and they wanted to be on set. They would go get a job as an extra and at least have the experience of being on set. Well, no, those jobs are gone now. I mean, mostly. They're trying as fast as they can to make all those AI. All of the studios pulled huge amounts of money out of production and into AI technology to scrape their own catalogs. Look at the whole thing in Vegas. Oh, great, let's make a AI enhanced version of The Wizard of Oz. In fact, let's just replace all the Munchkins' faces with faces of the billionaires who supported it. And I'm not kidding you. If you haven't heard that, they
What?
literally put some of these ultra rich people's faces over the Munchkins' faces as a thank you. So acting is starting to not be a career anymore. And not just not a career. I mean, it's what made me want to live, made me excited to be on this earth, was to become an artist and learn how to access my emotions and do all these things. What gives us meaning, what makes it worth it to be here is connection and art and these types of things. I mean, think about the pandemic. How much time when people were stuck inside, they went to TV or their favorite art. The people up top don't care about that. None of them do. So they're not just sucking our money, they're sucking the purpose out of our lives, and they're sucking the hope out of our lives that things could get better. How can you have hope when you don't have anyone fighting for you?
That's why I say this is the turning point. This is the turning point. Because AI is going to be a technology almost like the Industrial Revolution, or it could be, that upends everything. And where are the people who understand that and will make sure that that does not happen? Because it is possible to make sure that that does not happen. But they are using their wealth and power extremely well. I mean, the vice president of the United States is a tool for Peter Thiel and all of these oligarchs. But the Democratic Party, the leadership at least, doesn't seem to think it can survive without their money. And they're willing to compromise all of us to get the money that they think that these billionaires, will give them to float the party. It'll never work. Power just wants more power. Money just wants more money. Capitalism just wants more riches. And it's got to stop. I mean, I don't want you to be discouraged in this sense. It's very clear to us now that the Democratic Party is not coming to save you. The only ones who can save us is us. Just like the only one who could stop the Vietnam War was us. Just like the civil rights movement got so loud and so angry that people could not ignore it anymore. The job of your generation, of our time, is to find the ways to use the outrage which is surging through you guys and the whole country, and not turn that into despair, but turn that anger into an unstoppable movement that will change fundamentally the way power is wielded in the United States. Because we have always fought against oligarchy. Always. They run riot, they destroy people's lives, and then you get somebody like a Franklin Roosevelt who brings the country back from the brink. Who is that leader going to be? But that leader will not emerge unless we make them emerge.
I fear the direction we're heading now is more the direction of Rome before the collapse. And I want to be hopeful about our country's future, but you almost feel nihilistic after a certain point.
Yeah.
You almost think, is this country savable? Because the wealth inequality has gone so insane. I mean, look at Elon Musk getting this $1 trillion offer from Tesla. And he's also the ugliest, stupidest person I've ever seen. Like
There is
giving the biggest rewards to the worst excuse for a human being on the planet. I mean, I think you're right. We are the only ones who can save ourselves, and we do need to fight, but it sure can take the wind out of your sails.
Oh, it does take the
Yeah.
wind out of your sails. I mean, you know, people wanted to know why at these marches, especially in the beginning, it was all full of people, old people. And it's because we have been in a similar place before. We understood the civil rights movement, and what did we do to get visibility? We marched. We marched to stop the Vietnam War. We marched for women's rights. And that's what we know how to do. We know how to march. And we also know that that caused an incredible backlash every single time. It was not a straight line. At the height of the Vietnam War protests, Richard Nixon was elected. So we know it's not a straight line, but it doesn't mean you can't be in the fight. And you
Yeah.
will win if you stay in the fight.
Just like
So-
my hero Chuck Schumer always said.
Yeah, but you have to really mean it. You have to
Yes,
really
I think that
actually
is the difference,
mean
is
it.
that you have to mean it. I'm curious about one thing, Anna. We've talked about this a bunch of times. You are the one of us who will be most affected if insurance premiums skyrocket. I know that has been a huge stressor
Yeah.
for you too. So I don't know how much you'd want to share of that.
No, I don't want to cry on the podcast. I feel like I have been holding a lot back. I'm not used to talking on camera, and I'm like, I don't want to just sit here and just cry, to be honest with you, because I don't,
Yeah.
the unaffordability of life in general, and especially when it comes to healthcare, is something that definitely has directly affected my family and a lot of people that I know. And so, yeah, that was part of the anger and the fear when you say, you guys aren't even going to protect the crappy system that we have that we can barely afford. It's going to get worse. I'm trying to imagine a world like that.
I
You
so
know?
agree, because it's like sometimes you're like, you guys aren't even fighting for it to get better. You're just fighting for it to get less worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Exactly. And I felt like, when you hear people like Mamdani, his take on things, I'm like, yes. And the fact that he could come into power, so encouraging. I mean, I guess it does go to show that there are maybe an increasing amount of people that are becoming really deeply dissatisfied with these establishment Democrats. And I hope that we continue in that direction, because that's what we need. We can't have people that are going to fold and to give in to Trump and Project 25 and all this big agenda, and you see it unrolling in front of our face. Like, you see it actually coming into fruition, and then there comes these moments where we could maybe put a little break on it, and then we don't.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
beyond infuriating, and it's scary. It feels scary.
I think, at the moment, the Democratic Party has briefly been rescued from all of the rage because of these Epstein files. I think they're counting on people to have short memories. And it's true. We
Imagine
do have
if we
short.
had gotten them both together. Imagine if we could have
I
had
know.
still the shutdown coming into holidays. By the way, I am not, obviously, I want people to get paid. I want SNAP benefits to get paid. All of those things are super important to me. But imagine if we went into the holidays without being able to freely fly around the country, right? And that heavily inconvenienced many, many people. Imagine the urgency that would have created, along with the Epstein files. Now we actually have a chance to uproot this thing. But instead, it's not like, oh, yeah, they're counting on us having these very short memories, and, oh, look over here. Oh, look, the Epstein files over here. Oh, look. You know what I mean? We never stick the plot. We never stay the course. Unfortunately, sometimes that means like having to face a little bit more pain in order to come out on the other side in a better place that is not going to create long-term pain. We have to be able to withstand the fire being put to our feet a little bit. We can't just jump out of the fire at the first, the first warming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
we're in an era of massive, massive wealth inequality growing ever worse, and we have a Republican Party who is growing increasingly fascistic and blaming all of America's problems on trans people and brown people and every marginalized group they can think of. They're now even sweeping in their own people into that mix, and in the way they're labeling them as welfare queens. Meanwhile, we have a Democratic Party who doesn't have a backbone.
Doesn't have a clue.
A good number of people in the Democratic leadership who are not treating this moment with the urgency it requires. This can make us feel powerless, especially after we came out in the streets at the voting booth and then we feel betrayed like this. But we do have to move forward, Mom. So do you have any final words of encouragement that can, if not give us some hope, give us some marching orders?
Okay. So here's what I feel like after being here a long time, over 3/4 of a century, on this earth, which is right now there is a movement that understands this, and it is too angry and too big to go away. It will not go away. You have to, anger is one of the biggest motivating factors. You have to turn your anger and make it into a fist. How do you do that? Well, the Republicans found out that when you fuck with us, we will punish you. And the Democrats have to find out that if you fuck with us, we will punish you. We will punish you by not giving you money. We will punish you at the ballot box. We will punish you in the streets. We will take over your party. Remember that the Republicans had a movement called the Tea Party, which was what they called AstroTurf because it was funded by, big people who used other people as props. But that movement utilized genuine anger, and they took over that party. They did the work because change is hard. Change is work. They figured out how the party worked, and they got themselves elected in little tiny local positions within that party. The most boring thing you could possibly imagine. But they knew that that was the way that you change. That's part of the way you change. I would say there are 3 things. Number 1, run for something. There's a website you can go on. Run for something. Run for dog catcher. Run for anything. Because that's where it starts. There are hundreds of thousands of elections all over the United States every year that have only one candidate, that have no candidates. Start small. Go to a place like that. They'll tell you what's available and they'll give you help. If you can't do that, then I would say money is the coin of the realm. Mamdani got elected in part. Part of what helped him was that New York City has this public financing law. For every dollar he raised, I think it was up to $1 million, the city of New York gave him $8. So he got a lot of money from public financing. Now, that's a tough lift everywhere, really. But it means that $2 and $1 and $3 for people that you really want to back adds up. $1 given by 1 million people, is $1 million. In some of these elections that will change our fate, that makes a big difference. And if you don't have the money, then call up your parents who do have money because they're boomers, and they have all
Mom,
the
I've
wealth
been
and
meaning
say,
to ask you, actually.
yeah, I knew that would happen. Don't ask me, but other people. I'm talking about other people. Don't ask me. No, you can ask me. Ask your parents to give money. You know what I mean? When you vote, figure out who you want to vote for and then have a party and bring your friends along. So this is the opposite of how cynical you feel right now, which is like they're all the same. Why should you bother voting? Why don't you make it your business to teach them a damn lesson? There are 2 groups that are already on the front lines. There's Indivisible, and there's a group called 5051. So go to 5051. They're really good. Because I'm trying to give you simple things to do. You guys pointed out that the Democrats have no theatricality. They have no, even the good ones, they have no clue. They have no clue. I have no clue. The only reason that we do this is because I have children who understand how to do this. Otherwise, this would never have happened. So use your voices to teach them what you want. You know, you guys saying that you were going on those Instagrams of those senators, do it again, do it more. Their staff, they don't have a clue, but their staffs read it.
Speaking of using our voices, Dan, since this is your first time on our podcast, you and I have been working on a project to try and expand our voices and also examine some of the mechanisms that got us to this terrible place we're in now by examining politics through the lens of films in the 1980s and before. Tell our audience about that project so they can check it out.
This is the shameless plug section of the
Yes.
video. The channel is called Man Boy Nice, which is kind of my handle. And really, it's video essays that are dedicated to basically using cultural touch points. We launched this 2 months ago, and we've been working on it for years. So right now, the videos are all 80s horror related. They won't be in the long term, but we are analyzing films and other media and things like that from the past as a way of giving us some context of the political moment we're in now. The first one was about the Nightmare on Elm Street sequel, Freddy's Revenge, which is considered the gay one, which came out the year I was born, which is 1985, which was right at the, basically, I don't know if I would say the height of the AIDS epidemic, but right when it was starting to reach a boiling point. It's an analysis of that moment and of my experience trying to be an actor in the early 2000s as a gay person. And it has been kind of mostly an effort to use my voice. And I think since I have this moment to use my voice, the thing of this episode I really want to hit home, if I haven't been quite obvious already, is that Schumer needs to go.
They may be counting on us to have short memories, but when you feel something, when you feel betrayal, that feeling is not going away anytime soon. And like you said, Mom, it's time for us to take on the mantle of leadership ourselves. If they won't do it, we're going to have to do it instead. Thank
Right.
you all so much for this family
Thanks
meeting.
for having me.
I love you all. Mom,
Love you guys.
I love you, and I'll talk
Love
to you
you all.
soon. Mwah.
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you all so much for joining us, and a special thank you to my older sister and my younger brother for joining us on the podcast. Shameless plug, if you like horror movie history and politics and the analysis of film and how it relates to culture and history, please consider checking out my brother and I's channel, Man Boy Nice. It's a good time if you're into that sort of thing. And remember to check out Mom and I on Patreon, where you can get bonus stuff and mostly just really support us on our channel. It really helps us out a lot. Please like the video, tell us what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.